the days of business being a brand, or the larger business being a brand, I think people are now trusting the smaller person, so to speak. I think, after 5 years of doing this, when I first started, it was almost like, oh, who are you? But now it's like you go through doors and you meet people, you meet families, and there's no question anymore because they've seen you and your personal brand. Yeah, it's massive.
And I'll never forget that time where we sat down, we formed the strategy, we had a coffee, we talked about what we wanted to do. And a week later, you rang me up and said, what have you done? Because my phone's been ringing non-stop since then.
We had loads of calls off the back of that. It was just a moment. It was like, well, I need to look at doing this. And then, I think the success of that came. We had a number of calls pretty much within a week.
Hello and welcome to the AMB podcast. I am joined today by Chris Durrant, founder and owner of Durrant Co.
Yep.
Chris,
how you doing?
How are you?
I'm very good, mate. Very good. Thanks for inviting me on.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, Chris founded Durrant Co back in 2020.
Yep.
And has since gone through a few different iterations of business. So we're here today to discuss, obviously, your growth, how AMB have helped with that. So why don't you give everyone a bit of a backstory about Durrant Co?
Okay, yeah. So look, 5.5 years ago, I started my life as a self-employed estate agent. After sort of 15 years in an independent agency, saw a bit of a change in how the market was. Started my business about 5.5 years ago. Chris Boult Estate Agents with EXP, and then more recently, we are obviously working together just to launch Durrant Co because things have changed. I felt the need to change the naming because I thought it wasn't just me anymore. It was actually other people involved. Which is why I've decided to obviously go through a bit of a rebrand after a bit of a quick rebrand, but the time was right to do this again.
So what differences would you say there are between being an independent estate agent compared to the more traditional corporate model?
Yeah, this is a big one for me because I think really when you look at sort of what I am now, an independent self-employed estate agent, it's more about, for me, it's about looking after people. And I think that's lost in traditional high street, large estate agencies. It's not about the people, it's about the businesses. Whereas for me, I completely flip it on my head, and it's about actually helping people through the whole house selling, buying process. And I think that's lost because, again, it comes back to I'm not going to tar everyone with the same brush, is I don't think they really look after people the way you should do when you're looking after their biggest prized asset or whatever the situation might be. So for me, the biggest thing is customer care, and that's what I think the difference is.
So as a kind of marketing industry professional, the biggest thing for me that I've seen change is the lean towards the personal brand. Before, you'd see boards and they were all corporate. They had the corporate logo, the office numbers, etc. And what I'm seeing now is that there's a heavy lean towards the person. So you look around, especially in the Milton Keynes area, every board's got a picture of the agent on it. It's got their personal details. It's got a QR code where you can follow their social media. How important is that kind of personal brand to you as a new business founder?
Hugely important. I think you're right. I think the days of kind of the business being a brand, or the larger business being a brand, I think people are now trusting the smaller person, so to speak. They're trusting those personal brands. Previously, it used to be some big company and co would be the big business, and you go through the door because of them. But now, as long as you've got as long as you're doing the right job, you've got maybe the social proof. People are now sort of saying, actually, this person can really help me. And I think, how you market yourself and how you show what you're doing is very important. I think, after 5 years of doing this, when I first started, it was almost like, oh, who are you? But now it's like you go through doors and you meet people, you meet families, and there's no question anymore because they've seen you and your personal brand, social media, whatever. They've seen you, and it's massive.
So let's take it back to the very start, just over 5 years ago then. And how did you kind of make that first step? What were your first steps when you thought, I'm going to go alone, I'm going to set up my own business? How did you get that first step in the door? Was it through referrals? Was it through the use of social media?
Referrals. Let's be honest. I think you have to rely on your own personal network, and I think I always say this to new agents that are joining: it's a lot stronger than you think it is. People always want to help the little person, I think, and the referral. You got to shout about it because I'm doing this. And people quickly sort of send you the messages. They don't send loads of messages. Not that you get loads of homes, but certainly you do get those people say, "Oh, so and so selling their house," or "I want to do this," or "I want to do that," or certain situations arise and your friends come along and say, "Look, I've got a house to sell. Can you help me?" And obviously that's obviously exactly where we started.
It was, yes. I think my house was the very first one that was sold when Chris Durrant was forming.
Yeah.
And so once you've taken that kind of first step, obviously, as an employed agent, your working life is very rigid in a way, in that you work in an office, you book appointments, you go to appointments, you do the follow-up. You're heavily targeted in that way.
Mm-hmm.
How did you kind of structure your business to give you that time? Because as a small business owner, and obviously I remember when I first started, I was doing everything myself. I was doing every element of that. And when you're working by yourself as well, you've got to do the viewings, do the follow-ups, make sure the sales are progressing, do your marketing, do kind of the admin, the infrastructure, the background. How did you kind of prioritize the marketing around everything else that was going on at the time?
Do you know what? It's a tough one, I think, because for me, I don't ever claim to be the most organised of people. So it was more a case of just get on and do it. It wasn't until more recently, obviously been going 5.5 years now, actually it got to a point where things were going well and I thought, well, I've got to change this now. It needs to be a case of now we need to have some structure. The thing with doing this job as estate agents, property professionals, whatever you want to call it, is that every day is different and things come on your plate and you do have to sometimes drop everything and deal with certain situations. However, as a business owner, that's the big change. It came to realise, I've been 3 years now, which is obviously, isn't it tipping point? 3 years is usually when businesses fail. So after 3 years, I was very much like, okay, now I need to actually have some structure in place. So then we started time blocking and putting systems and processes in place to make sure that you could do it. But the thing is, though, is doing what I do now, nobody really teaches you how to run a business.
No.
You just throw yourself in the deep end, and you realise that you have to get all these other bits and pieces done as well. Like I say, there's social media, there's all the properties, valuations, appointments, but all this kind of stuff. Financing, looking at your business, and now I'm after 5 years, it's now looking at actually. It's a viable business. It's been running well. It's actually moving on to the next stage of actually being a business and actually where's this going now, which is obviously what we're changing with Durrant Co, because it's now moved on again.
Yes. So obviously now you've got free. Well, before we talk about what comes next, let's talk about the support that you get, because obviously you've got an incredible network around you, and I think that's where being a self-employed estate agent is kind of changed. I remember maybe about 15 years ago when all the hype was online estate agency. The theory was, who would be better placed to sell your home than the people who own it? So obviously the company would obviously organise the portals, order the photography, get it all done. But then it was actually down to the owner to do viewings, show people around, sell the house. And obviously now, like you say, it's taken that step on again where a lot of agents are going down the self-employed route and through maybe like a network, for example. So why don't you talk about how important it is to have that kind of network of similar people around you?
I think I work with obviously the framework of EXP, and there are many others out there. EXP I've loved working with. They're an estate agency in a box effectively, and they're very good at what they do. I think in the greatest possible, they don't claim to be anything else but but the support network with them is huge. You can dip in, dip out of that, but more so now the support network of where I work in Milton Keynes and the surrounding areas. There's now about 7 or 8 other agents around this area, which we all lean on and we all help each other out. And there's always questions that somebody's been through and dealt with before and come out the other side. So I think it's interesting the rise of the online agency, and I think if you look at online agencies where you do it yourself, and now I think their market share was on the decline, and self-employed estate agency is massively on the increase. That said, I think there's a certain online purple agency which is probably having a little bit of a resurgence right at the minute. But yeah, the support networks are huge. Everyone goes into this thinking, yeah, I'm a good estate agent, I can sell houses, but you do need that support network around you, and this is very much given. We're all good friends.
And it's not just the support network. Obviously, estate agency as an industry has changed as well. I mean, a long time ago, I dabbled in estate agency. I worked for a lettings company for a year or so, and I remember it as being a very dog-eat-dog world, in that if you saw someone who worked for another agent in the street, you'd kind of cross the road to avoid them, and you'd avoid eye contact, all of that kind of stuff. But these days, obviously, everyone's friends in the industry, kind of to a certain degree, and you've got different professionals that will lend their time. There would be contact between agents to say, "Oh, we've seen you've got this house on the market. We've got the perfect buyer. Can we work together?" Mm-hmm. How has that kind of collaboration been fostered, so to speak?
I think you have to look at it from what is best for the customer. And that's how I principally work with a lot of my business, and what I deal with is what is right for the customer. And that's what I think has been lost in a lot of old estate agency. So for example, there's situations where other people have got houses on the market, other agents have got houses. There's lots of agents around Milton Keynes I know, either they're smaller independents or they're self-employed. And so might have that buyer for that house, or I might have so-and-so for that house. Or when you're looking at valuations, for example, if somebody's had a house sold in the past or recently, and it helps your valuation for that customer, pick up the phone and say, "Look, I know she sold that house recently. What did it complete at?" And they'll give you the figure. And bang, that really helps me. Thank you very much, because it helps the customer at the end of the day. And I think that is the beauty of the change that the property market is going through. It's changing from the dog-eat-dog cutthroat market to a collaborative market, and what is ultimately best to get those people moving.
Yeah, and it's actually been really nice to see. Obviously we've worked together on the Durrant Co rebrand, and obviously we've worked together over the last few years. And as an outsider looking in, you can even see that change when you see social media posts about agent boardwalks where there's no business chat. You just get together for a coffee, a stroll around a lake, and you just think about what's best for at the end point, the customer. And it's really interesting to see how that's changed, not just so quickly, but people have adopted that change so quickly, in the sense of they've been so receptive to that change.
Yeah, I mean that agent's boardwalk we did, which was just a walk around Willand Lake. It wasn't just self-employed agents. There was employed agents there. There was other people from the industry. There was solicitors there. There was a surveyor there. There was just all people just having a decent sort of chat. There was probably self-employed agents there, but I think a lot of people might have this misconception that when you're self-employed, you're on your own, but you're very much not. People generally want to see you work, generally want to see the business work, and they would just have a good time and ask questions. Oh, this has happened, that's happened. What can you help me with there? It's been a good change. I think it's a welcome change. I think it's what's needed.
Yes, and whilst we're talking about the change in the industry, marketing as a whole. So obviously 20 years ago it was very much by the book, in that you appoint an agent, the agent themselves would obviously take the photography, they'd do the write-up, and we've talked at length about how the traditional agency write-up, the highly sought after, the
boasting,
the words that always appeared in the Rightmove kind of portals. But these days, obviously, it's very different. Obviously, you employ specialist photographers and videographers to do work that you can just use, not just on the portals, but on social media.
Yeah.
How has that kind of aspect of your role changed quite quickly?
So obviously I did used to do my own sort of marketing material, but I think as your business grows and things change, it comes down to, as we said earlier, timing. Have time to edit, stuff like that. The thing that's really frustrating me is that it's not that hard to produce a reasonable level of material for somebody's home. But a lot of agents don't do it, and they just throw any old rubbish up online, and they really forget the impact of how that looks. But coming back to, again, running a business, and when things change from just a little one-man band kind of estate agency, you then have to get bits of marketing. You want to look the best. You want to show people's houses off the best they can. I think that's what's happened now for obviously for me and obviously working with you, is that it's changing now. It's success has been good, and it's time to kind of move on. I don't want to lose the personal side of it at all. The personal branding is always going to be there, and now it becomes a case of how far do I go, you know, to then keep some level of control over how it looks and how it runs.
Yes, exactly. I mean, in the industry that you're in, personal brand is everything really. In the sense of you've got your face on the board. Obviously, you're the person that answers the phone. You're the person that meets the sellers. You meet the buyers. You know, you're the key part of that process.
Yeah.
And it's not just the start of the process either. You're the person that then keeps it all together, speaking to solicitors, surveyors, all of that kind of stuff. How do you manage that process from a branding point of view? Because obviously there are going to be times when it's a struggle. There are going to be times when sales are quite complex. How do you kind of manage to bring that piece together as well?
So the people I'm working with now are certainly Kylie, who I've worked with before. So I know her really well. You've got to have the right people surrounding you, you know, and people who understand you. And that's been key for me. I work very closely with Kylie, and it's worked really well. It's a good question, but it's also something that I don't yet know the answer to properly, because it's how far is it going to go. I don't want to have a business directly of 20 estate agents, because that will lose that personal side of things. I'm very keen not to do that. Where it probably changes is, does the business change? Do I charge more higher fees, for example, for a very personalised business? And there's lots of different things we can go down that route, but the important thing, as you said, is to keep control of it, which is obviously very hard, because obviously letting go and delegation is obviously another part of business, which is very hard for a lot of people.
Yes, I mean, you know, it's I always found it very hard at the start to separate business life from personal life.
Yeah.
And obviously, in a marketing agency, you know, estate agency is similar. Where at the start you said everyone knows someone who's an estate agent. It's very similar as a marketing agency. Everyone knows a graphic designer. Everyone knows a website builder, and you always felt like you had to answer the phone at 8 o'clock at night, or get that piece of work done at 8 o'clock at night, and it kind of impedes on your personal life a little bit.
Yeah.
How did you kind of, like, us go back to that structure? How did you separate Chris Durrant Estate Agents from Chris Durrant the person?
Very badly. As my wife will probably attest to be honest. You know, doing this job, and I suppose it's very hard to differentiate, if I'm honest. So not a personal question, but even now I probably work too much. And but this is the thing with selling somebody's home, or them buying a home, is they're buying the home. It's not a product. So for me, part of my whole business ethos is that I'm there with them all the time. So if they've got a problem and it's 8 o'clock at night and they're worried about something, they can message me and I will answer that message. But you're also getting paid a lot of money. And I do think that you know, within reason, you should be there for somebody. You know, if it's a very mediocre point, and then okay, that can wait. But yeah, so in answer to that, I think it is a role which you live and breathe estate agency. I don't think you just do estate agency. I think the people that do estate agency are people that will work your 9 till 6, and they will get to a level in estate agency, and that's them done, and they'll never be there in another 3 years' time. I've done it 21 years, and I think the term is very philosophical or whatever. It's one of those things where I think I was supposed to be an estate agent. You know, I was going to leave it during COVID, but I looked into IT. There was loads of cheap courses on Udemy and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as I saw EXP pop up, I was like, oh, is this? There's a young lady selling loads of houses, and I was like, well, she's got 3 years experience. I've got like 17 years experience. A very, very good estate agent, actually. She's I think moved back to Poland now. I thought, if that lady can do it, I can do it. And yeah, it was quite an easy transition, to be honest.
Because the one thing that shines through for me is your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
For your, you call it a role or a job. It's not really that. It's more of a passion for you now. In the sense of every post on social media, you can see that it's got your personality behind it, and you're very open and say, I love my job.
Yeah, I do.
And, you know, it's almost refreshing to see because, like I say, before estate agency was a very by the book kind of industry in that, you know, there was a process to get a house sold in that you'd call an agent, they'd come out and value it. You'd sign a 6-12 week kind of contract with them where that only they've got kind of rights to that house, I guess.
Yeah.
And the process has happened.
Yeah.
And that was it. But obviously these days, let's talk about the social media aspect of it in the sense of, you know, you put a property kind of video on social media, within a week you've got 30,000 views.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you kind of tailor your work around social media?
So you get, I mean, look, you probably know some properties you put online, you get 300 views. Others you get 46, 50,000 views. However, it's now more respected and more looked after, a more looked at way of marketing homes, and you have to use it because people's journey starts anywhere, and flicking through social media is obviously a massive daily occurrence. I mean, how many hours do we sit there doom scrolling? But it is now you've got to have a robust social media sort of program or whatever, because people will search on it. And, you know, I mean, obviously Rightmove, they're the biggest property portal. I'm sure they have many offices and many meetings and high up offices about how they're going to combat, you know, the rise of social media property marketing. But yeah, you've got to be on there, and you've got to do it well. If you don't do it well, it just looks rubbish, you know. But yeah, I've had a property which I was struggling to get viewings on, put it on social media, and smashed out 3 viewings straight away. Both me and the owner were like, bloody hell, where did they come from? I was like, I just put it on social media, 3 viewings, and we got a sale out of it, you know. So yeah, it's again, it's how it's all evolving.
I think the important key there is, like you said, you've got to do it well. Like you say, we're in a generation where everyone's doom scrolling. Everyone's just obsessed with, and content these days is everywhere. Before, like I say, it was quite a modular kind of industry. Your content on estate agency was in newspapers. Remember the Citizen that used to have the property section?
Yes.
And you know, it was, you'd see houses in an estate agency window and obviously paper and all that kind of stuff. But these days, content is everywhere. But there's so much of it that you have to really shine through.
Yeah.
And that's where the branding and the personal branding becomes more important. It's like, you know, the traditional marketing science says that people have to see you 7 times before they'll act upon a message.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a contact through social media, through an advert, through seeing a board in the street kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you approach that from I've got to do it well? You know, do you sit down and think about the best way to use it, or do you have a structure that you use, or is it kind of respective of what you're trying to do?
I don't really have a structure. I ask people like you now to help. No, I think my only structure of that is to, one, make sure I'm apparent every day. You know, I try and do 3 different types of posts, whether it's one being a video, one being a news or an informative post, and then maybe something a bit more jovial or whatever. But that's kind of the key thing is consistency, and much like anything in I'm going to say in property, boring consistency will make you successful. But again, you've got to do it at a level of quality.
Exactly that. And let's talk about some of the work that we have done together then.
Cool.
Let's talk about the SEO work, for example, where we had a bit of a catch up and you were basically asking what it was, because it's not something that has really been prevalent in estate agency as a whole, because you've got these massive portals that you use, and obviously when you're a corporate you don't have to worry about those kind of things. And I'll never forget that time where we sat down, we formed the strategy, we had a coffee, we talked about what we wanted to do, and a week later you rang me up and said, what have you done? Because my phone's been ringing non-stop since then.
Yeah, loads of calls off the back of that.
And kind of what kind of drove you to look at different avenues, and how did the success of that work actually improve your business?
Oh, well, look, so it comes to different points, isn't it, when the business is growing. When you start doing this role as an estate agent, I'm just selling homes, and then it moves into being a business, and it kind of moves on from there, different strategies. And I think it was just a moment. It's like, well, I need to look at doing this because I've not done anything, you know, SEO wise or concentrate on my website or whatever. So obviously then we had a chat, And then I think the success of that came. We had a number of calls pretty much within a week, after a few tweaks and changes that you've done and changing things around.
Yeah.
And that was obviously massively important.
Yeah, no, like I say, I mean, with SEO, I mean, there's so many different agencies out there these days. They'll tell you need AEO or GEO, or you need to be featured in ChatGPT and all that kind of stuff. All of those ChatGPT, Claude, LLMs as they're called, they all get their information from Google still.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they still, you know, it's basically just SEO in a new branding kind of. But the whole point of those campaigns is to just drive impressions and all that kind of stuff. And you could see your results. You know, you shot up the Google rankings quite quickly. You know, like you say, your phone was ringing pretty much instantly with the tweaks that you've done. And the whole important thing is that what service providers like estate agents always sometimes lose track of, and marketing agents are very good at it as well. It's like, we didn't sit down and go, oh yeah, but you've got so many more views, you've got so many more impressions. We sat down and just went, this is how much money you're making from this. And that's kind of like the driver of it. It's like, how much is this going to actually bring income to your small business? How did that kind of make a change?
Well, it did, obviously, but money's everything, isn't it? Ultimately, I mean, yes, I like the success of doing the right job, but it doesn't. The job doesn't work if you're not making the right income. So the increase in that traffic has obviously helped me and move on, fund changing. You know.
So let's talk about Durrant Co now, and obviously the branding. Obviously, when we sat down, there were some elements that were very important to you, like the blue. And obviously, as it's evolved, you've now got the gold elements and the white elements that are dripping in.
Yeah, no white brick walls there.
No more white brick walls and Canva templates. What does it mean to you? Obviously, now that you're 5.5 years in, and you've gone from, you know, Chris Durrant powered by EXP to Durrant Co. What does that kind of evolution and the work that we've done together mean to you?
But it's personal pride, isn't it? It's a personal pride element of it. I've done a good job, and now it's trying to keep the quality retained. And you know, I think when you worked on those designs and threw these over to me, it was an instant. Yeah, they look really cool and they're really quality. And I just thought, that rings true what I want. You know, it's just that good side of the service I provide, and it just looks crisp. But yeah, ultimately massively important. I didn't want to complicate things. I didn't want to necessarily have logos and stuff like that. I just wanted it to be, you know, from the start. We had Chris Durrant, didn't we? But it only changed because I just thought, do you know what? People might not want to be Chris Durrant, you know. And I thought it's Durrant and Co, because I think they should have, how this EXP system works is, I think they're all self-employed individual agents, so they should have a certain element of, well, this is they're part of my business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just thought they looked it was a really good design, and it just instantly sat well.
Always good to hear. Well, thank you for coming on.
No problem at all. No, it's a pleasure.
We'll catch up again soon about how you're going.
Yeah, no, cool.